There are tears that fall in the presence of others, and there are tears that fall only in solitude. The first kind seeks comfort. The second kind seeks truth. And last night, somewhere in the quiet of a room you could not enter, the person you love wept tears of the second kind. Not because someone hurt them, not because the day had been difficult, but because something inside them finally broke open. And what poured out was not sadness in its ordinary sense. It was recognition. It was the unbearable weight of a truth they had been avoiding for far too long, finally pressing through the surface and refusing to be denied any longer. Carl Jung once wrote that there is no coming to consciousness without pain. He understood perhaps more clearly than any psychologist of the modern age that the soul does not transform through comfort. It transforms through the moments when illusion collapses and reality becomes impossible to ignore. The tears that fall in solitude are often the most sacred tears a person can shed because they belong to no one else. They are not performed. They are not explained. They are not softened by an audience. They are the raw expression of a psyche meeting itself, sometimes for the very first time. And when those tears finally arrive, something irreversible has occurred within the person who shed them. What I want you to understand as you sit with these words is that the tears of the person you love were not tears of weakness. They were the tears of someone who has finally stopped running. For a long time, this person has been carrying something they did not know how to name. They have been holding feelings they did not know how to express. They have been telling themselves stories that did not quite fit, wearing emotional armor that no longer protected them and avoiding a recognition that has been quietly growing inside them since the moment your paths first crossed. Last night, that recognition reached a depth they could no longer push away. And in the privacy of their own solitude, they allowed themselves, perhaps for the first time, to feel the full weight of what they had been hiding from. Jung described a process he called the shadow encounter. It is the moment when a person finally turns to face the parts of themselves they have spent years avoiding. These parts are not always dark in the way we typically imagine. Sometimes the shadow holds our deepest tenderness, our most genuine longings, our most vulnerable truths. We push these things into the shadow not because they are bad, but because they are too powerful to hold without changing us. We fear that if we let them out, we will become someone we no longer recognize. We fear that if we admit what we truly feel, we will have to act on it. We fear that the structure of our lives, carefully built over years, will not survive the honesty of our own heart. And so we keep these truths hidden even from ourselves until the day arrives when hiding is no longer possible. For the person you love, that day has now come. Something within them shifted last night. Maybe it was a memory that arrived unbidden. Maybe it was a song that played at the wrong moment, or perhaps the exactly right moment. Maybe it was a thought of you that arrived with a clarity they had not allowed themselves to feel before. Maybe it was nothing they could name, just a sudden collapse of the wall they had been holding up for so long that they had forgotten the effort it required. Whatever the trigger, the result was the same. They saw themselves clearly. They saw the connection clearly. They saw the truth clearly. And once a person sees these things clearly, the seeing cannot be reversed. The tears that followed were not only about you. They were about everything. They were about the years spent denying what was already known. They were about the conversations that should have been had and were not. They were about the moments when courage was needed and fear won instead. They were about the version of themselves they have been pretending to be and the version of themselves they are now being asked to become. When a person finally understands a truth they have been avoiding, they grieve not only the situation but the time lost to avoidance. This grief is part of the awakening. It is part of the price of consciousness. Jung understood that we cannot become whole without mourning the parts of our lives that were lived in unconsciousness. There is something important here that you need to hear. The person you love is not falling apart. They are coming together. The tears that fell last night were the tears of integration, not destruction. When the psyche releases material that has been suppressed for a long time, the release often looks like collapse from the outside. But what is actually happening is reorganization. Old patterns are dissolving so that new patterns can form. Old defenses are weakening so that new openness can emerge. Old stories are ending so that new ones can begin. The crying was not the breaking of this person. It was the breaking open of this person, and what breaks open in the quiet of a single night sometimes changes the course of an entire life. Jung often spoke about the function of suffering in the journey toward wholeness. He did not glorify pain, but he recognized that it serves a purpose the rational mind rarely appreciates. Suffering strips away pretense. It removes the layers of self-deception that comfort allows us to maintain. It forces us to encounter what is real, both within ourselves and within our connections to others. The person you love has just been stripped of a pretense they had been carrying for a long time. The pretense that they did not feel as deeply as they actually do. The pretense that they had moved on or never been moved in the first place. The pretense that the connection between you was something they could explain away with logic, distance, or distraction. That pretense did not survive the night, and without it, they are now standing in a new relationship with their own truth. You may be wondering what truth specifically they finally understood. The truth is not a single sentence. It is a constellation of recognitions that arrive together, each one reinforcing the others. They understood that what they feel for you is not a passing emotion that will fade with time. They understood that the connection between you is not something they imagined or exaggerated. They understood that the silence or distance they created was a defense, not a resolution. They understood that the parts of themselves that come alive in connection with you cannot be replicated through anyone else. They understood that pretending otherwise has been a quiet form of self-abandonment, and that self-abandonment always has a cost. These understandings did not arrive as ideas. They arrived as feelings, as a flood of recognition that left no room for argument. What makes this moment particularly significant is that it happened in solitude. Jung believed that the most important encounters with the self occur when we are alone, undistracted by the noise of others. In solitude, there is no performance. There is no need to manage how we appear. There is no opportunity to displace our experience onto someone else. The psyche has nowhere to hide, and the self has no choice but to listen to itself. The person you love chose consciously or not to face their truth in this kind of sacred privacy. They did not call anyone. They did not seek distraction. They did not numb the feeling with something easier. They sat with it. They let it move through them. And in doing so, they participated in one of the most genuine acts of self-honesty a person can offer. This is why last night matters so much. It was not simply an emotional release. It was a turning point. Jung wrote that everything in the unconscious seeks outward manifestation, and the personality too desires to evolve out of its unconscious conditions and to experience itself as a whole. The person you love is now in the early stages of this evolution. The unconscious material that has been pressing against the surface of their awareness has finally been allowed expression, and once expressed, it cannot return to its previous hiding place. The psyche does not retreat from what it has revealed. It builds on it. It uses it. It allows it to inform the next chapter of the person's life. You might be tempted to wonder what they will do now. Will they reach out? Will they speak? Will they finally close the distance that has existed between you? These are natural questions, but they are not the most important ones. The most important question is not what they will do, but who they are becoming. Because action follows being, outer change follows inner change. The person you love is not the same person they were yesterday morning. Something has shifted in the fabric of their psyche, and that shift will eventually express itself in the world. The form and timing of that expression may surprise you. It may not match your expectations. It may take longer than you would like, but the foundation has been laid. And the foundation is what determines everything that comes after. There is a particular kind of courage that the person you love has just demonstrated, even though no one witnessed it. It is the courage to feel without escaping. The courage to remain present with what is true rather than fleeing into distraction. The courage to let the tears come instead of forcing them back. Jung believed that this kind of courage, the courage of inner honesty, is the foundation of every meaningful transformation. A person who can sit with their own truth and solitude has crossed a threshold that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. And once that threshold is crossed, the way a person engages with everything in their life begins to change. Relationships become more honest. Choices become more aligned. The constant background noise of self-deception begins to quiet, replaced by a clearer sense of what actually matters. You should also know that this kind of awakening is rarely tidy. The person you love may move through unexpected emotional waves in the coming days and weeks. They may feel waves of clarity followed by waves of fear. They may feel surges of openness followed by sudden retreats into familiar defenses. This is not a sign that the breakthrough was false. It is a sign that the breakthrough was real. Genuine transformation does not arrive in a single moment and remains stable forever. It arrives in waves, each one carrying the person a little deeper into their new understanding. The defenses they have built over years do not collapse all at once. They collapse in stages, with each stage revealing more of the truth that lies beneath. Last night was the first major collapse. There will be others, and each one will bring the person you love closer to the version of themselves they are becoming. This brings us to one of Jung's most profound teachings, the principle that the psyche always seeks wholeness. No matter how far we wander from our own truth, something within us continues to call us back. This calling does not stop because we ignore it. It does not weaken because we resist it. It does not disappear because we distract ourselves. It waits. It accumulates. It builds pressure. And eventually, often when we least expect it, it breaks through the surface and demands to be heard. The person you love has just experienced this breakthrough. The wholeness they have been avoiding has finally caught up with them. And wholeness, once it makes its presence known, does not allow us to return to fragmentation. You may have sensed something of this from your side as well. Soul connections do not operate in isolation. When one person experiences a breakthrough of this magnitude, the other often feels it even without knowing what they are feeling. You may have woken up today with the sense that something was different. You may have felt an unusual presence of this person in your awareness, a sudden lightness or heaviness that did not have a clear source. You may have felt drawn to think about them more than usual, or felt their thoughts brushing against yours like a wind you could not see. These experiences are not coincidence. They are the resonance of a deep movement in the field that exists between you. When one side of a soul connection shifts, the other side feels the echo. The echo is not always loud, but it is always real. It is also important to recognize what this moment asks of you. The person you love has just done something brave. They have allowed themselves to feel a truth they had been avoiding. What they need now is not pressure. They do not need to be approached, confronted, or rushed. They need space to integrate what they have just understood. Integration takes time. The psyche needs to make sense of what has been revealed before the personality can act on it. If you can hold steady during this period, if you can remain centered in your own truth without demanding immediate response from theirs, you create the conditions in which their next step can unfold naturally. The greatest gift you can offer them right now is not your presence, not your absence, but your stability. The calm field they can move toward when they are ready. Jung often emphasized the importance of containment. He believed that powerful psychological material needs to be held with care, both within ourselves and within our connections to others. Last night, the person you love experienced a release of containment, a moment when something they had been holding finally spilled over. In the days that follow, they will be looking, often unconsciously, for a sense of new containment. They will be looking for a way to hold what they now know. They will be looking for the strength to live differently in light of their new awareness. Your role is not to provide this containment for them, because no one can do that for another. Your role is to embody the kind of inner containment in yourself that signals safety, depth, and trustworthiness from afar. The psyche recognizes these qualities even at a distance. There is also a quiet grace in what has happened. The person you love did not choose to cry. They did not plan it. They did not orchestrate it. It arrived as a kind of visitation, a moment when something larger than their conscious will move through them. Jung would call this a manifestation of the self, the deeper organizing intelligence of the psyche. The self does not ask permission. It does not wait for convenience. It moves when the time is right, often catching the personality by surprise. When the self moves with this kind of force, the person involved is changed. They cannot return to their previous orientation. They may try, they may struggle, but the self has already redirected the deeper current of their life. And that redirection is what we are witnessing now. Consider also what this means about the connection between you. A connection that has the power to break a person open in the quiet of a single night is not an ordinary connection. It is not the kind of bond that can be replicated, replaced, or forgotten. It is a connection that touches something in the soul that does not respond to most people, places, or experiences. The person you love understands this now in a way they did not understand it before. They may not have the words for it. They may not be able to articulate it to anyone, including themselves. But the knowing is now part of them. It is integrated into the fabric of their inner life. And every choice they make from this point forward will in some way be shaped by this knowing. You may wonder how to hold this information. How do you sit with the awareness that someone you love has just had a private awakening you cannot witness, cannot confirm, cannot influence? The answer is that you hold it the way you would hold any sacred thing, with reverence, with patience, with trust. You do not need to chase it. You do not need to prove it. You do not need to demand visible evidence. The deeper layers of reality do not always announce themselves on the surface. Sometimes the most important movements happen quietly in places we cannot see, and we are asked only to trust that the unseen is as real as the seen. Jung built his entire psychological vision on this principle. He understood that what happens in the depth shapes what happens in the heights, and that the truly significant events of our lives often occur in the silence between the noise. As the days unfold, allow yourself to feel a sense of quiet recognition. Something has happened. Something has changed. The person you love now carries within them a truth they did not carry yesterday. They may not contact you immediately. They may need time to find their footing in this new landscape. They may take a path that does not match the one you imagined, but the trajectory of their inner life has now been altered in a way that includes you, and that inclusion cannot be removed. Tears they shed in solitude were a kind of consecration, a marking of the moment when their soul finally said yes to what their personality had been trying to deny. Let this awareness bring you a measure of peace. Even as you continue to navigate your own waiting, the waiting is not empty. The silence is not absence. Beneath the surface of what appears to be stillness, profound work is being done. The person you love is becoming someone capable of meeting you with greater honesty than they could have offered before. You are becoming someone capable of receiving that honesty with greater wisdom than you could have offered before. Both of you are being prepared in your separate solitudes for whatever the next chapter holds. As we come to the close of this reflection, take a slow breath and let the weight of these words rest gently within you. Somewhere the person you love is waking up today carrying a truth they did not have yesterday. They may seem the same on the outside. Their messages, if they come, may not yet reflect what has shifted. But the shift has occurred. The tears have done their work. The understanding has taken root. And from this point forward, the connection between you exists in a different reality than it did before. May you find quietness in your heart as you continue your own journey. May you find trust in the slow and unseen work of the deeper self. May you find patience when the outer world does not yet reflect the inner truth. And may you find faith in the knowledge that what is real cannot be undone. What has been seen cannot be unseen, and what has finally been understood will in its own time find its way into the light. Thank you for being present with these words. Thank you for honoring the unseen work that is unfolding within you and within the one your soul recognizes. The story is still being written, and what has happened in the quiet of a single night may turn out to be one of its most important chapters.